Have you ever felt the pull of someone who clearly wants you, yet says nothing? The texts don't come. The calls never happen. But something in your gut tells you he's thinking about you, craving you in silence. It's maddening, right? You start questioning everything. Is he scared? Is he playing games? Am I supposed to reach out first? But here's the truth no one tells you. Craving you doesn't mean he'll act. Emotional desire without action is just fantasy. He may be afraid of rejection, addicted to the idea of you, or simply unwilling to face the version of himself you reflect back to him. His silence isn't always about you, it's about him. And the way you respond to that silence, that's where your power lies. Every time you chase, justify, or fill in the blanks, you lower the standard. But when you stand still, when you require effort, not just emotion, you shift the dynamic entirely. This isn't about playing hard to get, it's about protecting your peace. Because the man who truly wants you won't stay in the shadows. He'll show up. And when he doesn't, you'll know the craving wasn't love, it was comfort. And you deserve more than that. You ever get that text at 2 a.m. that says, hey, or maybe you don't even get that much. Maybe you just feel it, that he's still thinking about you. You sense it in the way he views your stories, in the way mutual friends hint that he asked about you, or the energy that lingers when your paths cross. There's this pull, this tension. And deep down, you know he still craves you, but he stays silent. He doesn't reach out, he doesn't show up, he doesn't step forward. And you're left asking yourself the question, if he wants me, why isn't he doing anything about it? That's the part that messes with your head, right? We're taught that when someone really wants you, they'll make it known. That desire leads to action. And when that doesn't happen, it throws everything into confusion. You start to doubt yourself, to question your value, to wonder if maybe it was all in your head. But here's what I want you to understand. Emotional craving, missing you, thinking about you, even feeling a deep pull toward you is not the same thing as emotional maturity. And it is definitely not the same as taking action. Craving you in silence is easy. It's safe. It costs him nothing. It allows him to stay in his comfort zone where you still exist as this idea, this memory, this perfect version of you that doesn't challenge him. But the moment he has to act on that craving, that's when the stakes change. That's when he has to risk something. His pride, his ego, his control. And for many people, that risk is too high, even if the desire is strong. He could be thinking about you every day. He could be replaying conversations, regretting moments, fantasizing about a future with you. But none of that matters if he's not willing to do something with those feelings. And that's where we fall into the trap. We assign value to his silence, thinking it's noble, romantic, profound. It's not. It's self-protection. Because what he wants isn't necessarily you, it's the feeling of you, the comfort of knowing he could reach out, the power of holding the door half open. That way, he gets the emotional benefit without the emotional effort. We've all done this in different ways. We crave people from a distance. We don't reach out, not because we don't care, but because we're scared. Scared of rejection, of awkwardness, of being seen trying and not succeeding, so we hold back. But here's the thing, craving without action is emotional indulgence. It's a fantasy, and fantasies are addictive because they're perfect, they're tidy. They don't come with risk, rejection, or responsibility. But relationships, real ones, are messy. They require vulnerability. They require discomfort. They require someone to say, I want this badly enough that I'm willing to step into the unknown. That's what separates a man who silently craves you from a man who shows up for you. The silence isn't romance, it's avoidance. Now, you might say, but maybe he's just giving me space. Sure, that's possible. But let's be honest, space turns into distance pretty quickly. A man who's truly invested will find a way to express that investment. He won't let fear dictate his behavior. Because when someone genuinely values you, they'd rather risk rejection than regret. They'd rather try and be told no than sit in silence wondering, what if? So don't fall into the trap of interpreting his silence as some deep sign of love. Don't romanticize his distance. And above all, don't start performing to get a reaction. Because the second you start showing up for him in response to his silence, you remove the incentive for him to ever show up for you. You become the emotional leader of the dynamic. And that's where you lose your power. What you tolerate teaches others how to treat you. If you accept crumbs, random likes, breadcrumb texts, passive silence, then that's all they'll feel they need to offer. But if you stand firm, if you stay grounded, if you recognize that desire without action is just noise, then you raise the standard and you give someone the chance to either rise to meet it or disappear altogether. There's a version of you that no longer gets pulled in by mixed signals, a version of you that understands your worth isn't measured by how much someone silently craves you, but by how willing they are to show up for you. Consistently, clearly, courageously. That version of you doesn't wait for a message that may never come. That version of you walks forward and leaves the silence behind. You might be wondering why someone who clearly has feelings for you can still stay completely silent. Why he doesn't reach out, even when all the signs suggest he misses you. Maybe you've seen that subtle social media activity, heard through the grapevine that he asked about you, or just felt that lingering energy people talk about. You can tell there's something unresolved, but instead of moving toward you, he disappears into silence. And it drives you mad. Not just because it's confusing, but because you start doubting yourself. Was it all in your head? Did you misread the connection? Why is he quiet if he still cares? Here's the truth that's hard to swallow. Desire isn't always stronger than fear. He may crave you deeply, but fear has a funny way of overpowering even the strongest emotions. When a man wants to reach out but holds back, it's often not about you, it's about what reaching out represents to him. Vulnerability, rejection, uncertainty, and sometimes even shame. To reach out means exposing himself. It means admitting that he still thinks about you, that he's not over it, that he still feels something. And for some people, especially those who don't know how to sit with their emotions or process rejection healthily, that kind of exposure feels unbearable. So what do they do instead? They stay silent. They tell themselves, I'll wait for the right moment. She probably doesn't care anymore. Or if she wanted to talk, she'd reach out first. They create 100 excuses that sound logical in their heads, but the root of it is fear. Fear of hearing a cold tone in your voice. Fear of finding out you've moved on. Fear of being seen as weak. And it's you to notice something important here. This fear isn't a reflection of how much he cares about you. It's a reflection of his own relationship with rejection. That fear was there long before you showed up. It's probably shown up in other areas of his life. Maybe he avoids hard conversations. Maybe he runs from anything that feels emotionally risky. So even though he craves you, he talks himself out of acting on it. He'd rather suffer in silence than risk his pride. Now here's where it gets even more layered. That craving he feels, it gives him comfort. As strange as it sounds, missing you becomes a safe little fantasy he can retreat into. In his mind, you're still there, you're still beautiful, still open to him, still caring in that way you used to be. But all of that is imagined. He doesn't have to test the fantasy against reality because he never actually makes a move. The craving becomes a kind of emotional crutch. It feeds him just enough to feel something, but not enough to require action. But that silence, no matter how deep the craving behind it, is not an act of love. It's not a form of loyalty. It's avoidance. And when we romanticize that avoidance, we set ourselves up for heartbreak. We start believing that the more he stays silent, the more meaningful his feelings must be, as if silence equals depth. But the truth is, silence just equals silence. So when you find yourself analyzing the silence, hoping it means more than it does, I want you to pull back and ask a different question. Not does he still care, but is he showing up? Not does he miss me, but what is he doing with that feeling? Because the reality is, real connection takes action. It takes bravery. It takes someone being willing to walk through that fear of rejection and say, I still care about you, even if I don't know what will happen. If he can't do that, it doesn't make him evil. It doesn't make him heartless, but it does mean he's choosing comfort over courage. And that choice, no matter how much craving is behind it, tells you everything you need to know. Because someone who truly values you will risk being uncomfortable to be in your life. Someone who truly wants to reconnect doesn't wait in silence for the perfect moment. They create the moment. They don't hide behind pride. They lead with humility. They take the chance. If he's not doing that, then no matter how much he craves you, it's not love. It's just a feeling he's hoarding. And feelings kept in the dark don't nourish relationships. They fade, they distort, and they often end up hurting both people more than if someone had just had the courage to speak. You don't need someone who silently desires you. You need someone who's brave enough to show up. There's a strange illusion we all fall into at some point. The idea that if someone deeply desires us, they'll naturally do the work to be with us. That if someone craves us, thinks about us constantly, dreams about us, feels our absence in their core, then eventually that desire will lead them back to us with open arms and clear intentions. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Desire alone always translate into action. And for many people, the craving actually becomes a substitute for effort. There are men who think about you constantly, who replay memories with you in their mind like a favorite song, who feel a knot in their stomach every time your name comes up, or they see a photo of you. And yet, despite all of this, they remain silent. They don't call, they don't text, they don't show up in any meaningful way. And the mistake we often make is interpreting their silence as confusion or hesitation or some deep internal struggle they're working through for the sake of love. Sometimes we think he just needs more time, or he's scared, but his heart is in the right place. But what's really going on is often much simpler. He's addicted to the fantasy of you. It's not the responsibility of being with you. You live in his head. In his head, he can feel close to you without having to be accountable. He can imagine conversations where everything goes perfectly, where there's no rejection, no vulnerability, no real-life awkwardness. He can idealize you, turn you into the version that suits him in the moment, the understanding version of you, the forgiving version, the always waiting version. It's emotional entertainment. A movie he plays on loop to comfort himself when he's lonely, when life gets overwhelming, or when his ego needs a boost. But it's all behind the curtain. None of it exists in the real world, where connection actually demands showing up, taking risks, making sacrifices, having uncomfortable conversations, owning mistakes. He craves the feeling you give him without committing to the relationship that would require him to consistently earn it. That craving becomes his escape. It soothes him. It gives him a sense of closeness without any of the vulnerability real intimacy requires. And here's where it gets dangerous. The longer he stays in this pattern, the more comfortable it becomes. Silence starts to feel safer than effort. The idea of you starts to feel better than the messy, unpredictable reality of building something with you. So he convinces himself that staying silent is somehow noble, that he's protecting you, or waiting for the right moment, or working on himself first. But in truth, silence becomes his permission slip to avoid stepping up. This is the part people rarely talk about. The fact that craving you in silence becomes self-serving. It's no longer about honoring you or the connection you shared. It's about him protecting his ego, keeping control, avoiding discomfort. And yet we often sit on the other end of that silence, waiting, giving meaning to it, filling in the blanks with hope. He must care. He's just scared. He'll reach out eventually. He's probably just thinking things through. But silence isn't a sign of love. Silence is absence. It's a lack of action. And craving without action is not romantic, it's cowardice. We need to stop confusing intense emotions with deep love. Someone can feel every emotion in the book and still choose not to act on it. You can be someone's muse and they can still let you walk away. You can be unforgettable and they'll still stay silent. Not because you weren't worth the effort, but because the effort scared them more than losing you did. Because doing the work meant changing something in themselves. Maybe their patterns, maybe their independence, maybe their story about what love should feel like, and they just weren't willing to do it. So what do we do when we sense someone craves us, but remains distant? We stop waiting for craving to evolve into courage. We stop hoping silence will transform into clarity. We look at the actions, or lack of them, and take them at face value. If someone wants to be with you, they will risk discomfort to make it happen. They will push through their fear. They will choose connection over control. And if they don't, that's your answer. You deserve to be with someone who doesn't just long for you in the shadows of their imagination, but who meets you out in the open, with presence, with effort, and with the vulnerability to say, I want this. I want you. Craving is easy. Commitment is courageous. And if you're going to build something real, don't settle for the one who thinks about you. You choose the one who acts on it. Do you ever wonder why someone who clearly felt something suddenly disappears? Why a connection that seemed mutual and full of potential just vanishes into thin air, and the person you thought was leaning in goes completely silent? And not because they didn't care, because that's the most confusing part, right? You know they cared. You felt it. You saw it in their eyes. Maybe you even heard it in their words. And yet, they're gone. What most people don't realize is that sometimes when someone craves you deeply, they're not just drawn to you, they're terrified of you. Not in the literal sense, of course, but in what you represent. You show up in their life not just as someone they desire, but as someone who challenges their sense of self. You reflect back to them all the things they're avoiding about themselves, where they are emotionally, what they're capable of giving, what they've been running from. And that's not romantic. That's uncomfortable. That's not butterflies. It's a mirror. And that mirror, it's brutally honest. See, craving someone in silence is often a form of emotional self-protection. It allows someone to feel all the chemistry, all the desire, all the intensity, without actually stepping into the vulnerability that real connection demands. When someone isn't ready to be fully seen, they'll retreat from the person who sees them the most. It sounds backwards, but it's incredibly human. The more they crave you, the more they fear that being with you will require them to confront parts of themselves they'd rather keep buried. You might have reminded him of the man he wants to be, but isn't yet, or the love he believes he's not ready for, or the truth he's spent years avoiding. That emotional intimacy isn't just about feeling, it's about showing up, risking and revealing. And maybe he's never had to do that before. Maybe he's always operated in situations where his emotional depth didn't matter, or where no one asked him to look inward. Then you arrive and everything changes. You don't just light him up, you disarm him. And when someone's used to armor, feeling unprotected isn't freedom, it's panic. That's why people sometimes leave something that feels good, not because it wasn't real, but because it was too real. It hit too close. It awakened emotions they didn't know how to process. That craving you felt in him, it was probably genuine, but desire is not the same as readiness. Just because someone wants to be near your light doesn't mean they're ready to step in it. And here's where it gets even more confusing. He may not even realize this is what's happening. He might just say it wasn't the right time, or something felt off, or I need space. But deep down, what he's really saying is, I saw myself too clearly with you, and I wasn't ready for who I saw. You deserve someone who's not scared to look in the mirror with you, who doesn't retreat the moment the relationship starts revealing the deeper stuff, where they're insecure, where they're uncertain, where they still need to grow. Because that's what love does. It exposes us. It takes the version of ourselves that's being curated and protected and says, let's go deeper. Let's peel it back. Let's get real. And you can't force someone to be ready for that. You can't love someone into emotional maturity. You can't inspire their growth by shrinking yourself to make them comfortable. Your power, your depth, your clarity, they're not the problem. They're the gift. And if someone walks away from that, it's not a rejection of your value. It's a reflection of their readiness. So don't sit in silence, questioning your worth because someone else wasn't ready to face theirs. Don't internalize their retreat as proof that you were too much. You weren't too much. You were just enough to stir something in them they didn't know how to handle. That's not your burden to carry. It's theirs to work through. And whether they do or don't, you have to keep being the kind of person who doesn't hide, who doesn't shrink, who keeps choosing real, even when it's messy, even when it's hard, even when it costs you people who were never ready to meet you there. Let them crave you in silence if they must. Let them sit with the echo of what they weren't brave enough to hold. But you keep moving. You keep choosing a love that doesn't flinch when it's asked to look in the mirror. Let's talk about this idea that someone can crave you deeply, yet still do nothing about it. Because I think a lot of people, especially when they're emotionally invested, find themselves stuck in a loop. You're analyzing every moment, every memory, every little thing that made you feel special with this person. And now he's gone quiet, radio silence. But then you hear, maybe from mutual friends or from something he said in passing, or even just through your intuition, he still wants you. He thinks about you. He misses you. So the question starts circling in your mind. If he craves me this much, why isn't he doing anything about it? And this is where so many people start rewriting reality in their head. We equate craving with commitment. We say, but he loves me, or I know he's hurting too. And we convince ourselves that his feelings should be enough proof that he deserves another chance. But craving is not the same as commitment. And you've got to stop treating it like it is. When someone wants you but doesn't act on it, what they're really doing is choosing comfort over growth. They're holding on to the emotions privately because that feels safer than stepping into the vulnerability of doing something real about them. It's self-soothing. It's like watching a movie of your love story on repeat in their head, because in that version, they don't have to take responsibility. They don't have to risk rejection. They can just feel without the consequences. But that kind of silent craving, it doesn't serve you. It doesn't protect your heart. It keeps you stuck in this limbo where you feel like you're constantly being energetically pulled back into something that isn't actually happening in real life. You're giving emotional weight to someone who's giving you nothing concrete to hold on to. You're holding space in your life for someone who's not showing up in it. There's a part of you that wants to believe that craving means he's still yours, that he's coming back, that he just needs time. And maybe that's true. Maybe he does feel regret, longing, or even guilt. But again, if those feelings don't translate into action, they're irrelevant to your life. You cannot build a relationship with someone's unspoken thoughts. You cannot move forward with someone who's stuck in fear. This is where your strength and clarity have to come in, because it's tempting to wait. It's tempting to leave the door cracked open just in case. But what you tolerate becomes your standard. If you wait around for someone who's staying silent, You're telling the universe that it's okay for someone to want you from a distance and still hold your heart. And that's not okay. You deserve someone who shows up, not someone who lingers in the background like a ghost. The kind of love that changes your life, the kind that makes you feel secure and seen and respected, that love is not quiet. It doesn't hide behind silence. It doesn't retreat into its own head. That love is active. It reaches out. It takes risks. It chooses you out loud. So if someone is craving you, but doing nothing about it, you have to see that for what it is, not a grand romantic gesture, but a lack of readiness, a lack of courage, a lack of the kind of emotional strength it takes to build something real. And I'm not saying that with judgment, I'm saying it with truth, because if you confuse someone's internal longing with actual devotion, you'll stay caught in their fantasy instead of living your own reality. There are people out there who will crave you and claim you, who will want you and step forward without hesitation, who will miss you and call you, text you, ask to see you, not because they're perfect or fearless, but because they know you're worth moving through the fearful. That's the difference. So when you find yourself wondering, why isn't he reaching out if he wants me? Stop. That's not the right question. The real question is, why am I still holding on to someone who isn't showing up? Your energy is sacred. Your heart is not a placeholder. Let someone else's silence be their own lesson, not your suffering. Walk forward, close the door with grace, and don't confuse someone's craving with their capacity to love you right. You see, there's this crucial part we often forget when someone stays silent, but still lingers in our emotional space. We think their silence somehow still holds meaning, that it's heavy with unspoken desire, that behind the stillness is a heart that's just too scared to come forward. And maybe that's true. Maybe he really does crave you. Maybe he lies in bed thinking about you. Maybe he looks at your old photos, scrolls through your stories, and wonders what you're doing, who you're with, if you ever think about him. That craving might be real, but here's the truth we need to lean into. Craving alone is never enough. We all want to be wanted. It feels flattering. But what happens when someone's desire for us never translates into action? When they keep their distance, even though you know there's a part of them that misses you, you start to fill in the blanks. You imagine that maybe if you just reached out, just gave them a nudge, they'd finally do something. Maybe he just needs reassurance. Maybe he's nervous. Maybe he doesn't know how to take that first step. So you make excuses for his silence, and in doing so, you start to lower the bar. And this is where it gets dangerous, because the moment you begin to meet someone where they refuse to rise, you teach them that your presence can be earned with their absence. That silence, paired with just enough emotional weight behind it, is enough to keep you invested. That's when the pattern begins. He doesn't have to do much, just feel things and hope you'll do the heavy lifting. But emotional responsibility isn't something that can be outsourced. If you want something real, it has to come from him. Now, think about this. Every time you lean in to bridge the silence, you're setting a standard. You're saying, this level of effort is okay. I will do the work for both of us. And even if it's not conscious on his part, he's learning from it. People learn from how we respond to them. Every time you tolerate a lack of clarity, a lack of communication, a lack of presence, you're teaching him that this is the level at which he can engage with you and still have your energy, your time, your emotional investment. But when you don't chase, when you hold your ground and allow the silence to speak for itself, something powerful happens. You shift the dynamic. You stop allowing craving to be the currency that buys access to you, because wanting you isn't enough. He has to show up for you. He has to be brave enough to break the silence, consistent enough to stay, and clear enough to communicate what he wants. Anything less than that isn't worthy of the space you hold. You're not punishing someone by not reaching out. You're honoring your own standard. You're saying, if you want to be in my life, it requires effort. It requires presence. I'm not here for the fantasy version of connection. I'm here for the real thing. And when you do that, you're not just protecting your heart, you're commanding a deeper level of respect. You're not manipulating, you're calibrating. You're deciding what's acceptable and what's not, based not on how much someone wants you, but on what they're willing to do about it. And maybe, just maybe, when he sees that you're not responding to breadcrumbs, not dancing to the tune of his craving, he'll realize that he has to rise. That silence isn't going to work anymore. That if he truly wants you in his life, he can't just feel it, he has to act on it. And if he doesn't, if he stays in that place of comfort and fantasy, then you've just saved yourself from investing in someone who was never going to be capable of meeting you where you are. There's a certain power in not reacting, in being the one who doesn't chase. It's not about playing games, it's about self-respect. It's about knowing that your time, your energy, your love, they're all incredibly valuable, and only someone who recognizes that and proves it through action deserves access to it. So the next time you're tempted to make sense of someone's silence, to fill in the gaps with hope or fantasy or emotional generosity, pause. Ask yourself not what he feels, but what he's doing, because that's what matters. That's where the truth lives, in what he's doing or not doing. The standard you set today becomes the treatment you accept tomorrow.